So we had a big day all planned here, Jody and I. Smitty was late sub. We had a private plane chartered to take us to the Poconos, race Lawmaker tonight, and with the bad weather, plane was a no-go. So we had to jump in the car. Smitty luckily was available, and we're on our way to the Mohican Sun Casino Resort in the Poconos to race Lawmaker. Jody, you have Sintra, do you? Sintra in tonight? Hey, Sintra in tonight? Yeah, he's giving me the thumbs up. He said Sintra in tonight. So we're on the road. We're gonna do. I'm gonna run through the racehorses as quick as I can. Obviously, with all the horses that we had to talk about, and all the horses we qualified, it makes it much easier to narrow lists down. Obviously, we're going to talk about mostly the horses that are qualified or are going to qualify this week. Focus on them, focus on the ones that are going to start racing. Stake races have already started. Ontario and Pennsylvania are after July, but Ohio, which is our biggest grouping, if you will, of stake horses, it starts next week. So Amy and I and the kids, like a band of gypsies, are going to go on the road for 5 days to Ohio. So anyway, Jason and Kevin had a decent week racing. Obviously cruising in style, raced poorly his last start. He's a little bit sick. Andrew's going to race him, I think. He couldn't find that much wrong. A little bit of sickness, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Nothing serious. So he's going to race him back in Yonkers next week, I believe he told me. Lawmaker obviously is in tonight. Holden Steady is in to go Sunday. I mentioned Holden Steady because he's already a stake winner. Colt won his first stake in Illinois. He's in to go in a maiden race on Sunday at Hawthorne Racecourse. I don't know much more than that, to be honest, but he looked some good in his stake race last week. Not an Angel come up a little bit short, as I mentioned in my last video. Not an Angel had a few little bumps and bruises when she got to Hawthorne, and Angie and Rob had to work really, really hard to get her sounded up and keep her sound, and in doing that, couldn't train her a whole lot, so she ended up going into the race kind of short. Racehorses, when you don't race them for a couple of weeks, some of them can get by, but when you're dealing with 2-year-olds that are trying to pack that muscle on and keep their physique up, you really can't wait 2 weeks. You can't not train them. But obviously the situation being what it was, most importantly was the horse, making sure she was sound and comfortable on the track. From what I could see when I flew out to Chicago and raced her, Angie and Rob did a tremendous job getting her sound, keeping her sound, and she raced good. Tried a mile in 2 minutes and a piece. A little tired on the end of it, but as I said to Angie, if you can get her better every week and sound her and get her tight, I believe she'll be one of the division leaders by the end of the season. So Not an Angel was tremendous. Ivanka wasn't, she's got a few little holes in her. Little physically immature, and I believe that maybe some time off would be best for her. We had emailed all the clients and told them last week that, we had some issues with this filly. Again, when she got out there, her right front leg had some, left front leg, sorry, had some swelling in it. We had it looked at after the race. In fact, there is an injury there. So it's not something she can't come back from, but, given her sheer size, I think it's probably best for everybody, horse especially, if we just work on getting her healed up and kick her out in the field and let her grow up and mature into a better filly. Maybe start her at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. But definitely showed a lot of tenacity, raced really, really well, given the fact that she was dealing with an injury for herself. So very happy with both those fillies. Obviously both of them now in a very different trajectory for the rest of the year, but happy with the way they both turned out. Now, Jason raced a bunch of horses this week. He's heading down to Ohio next week. He's racing down to Ohio. He's going down to Ohio next week to race. So I'm not going to mention all the babies he's taken because that'll spread everything out too wide. So we'll keep the babies to the baby section for now. The horses that qualified and raced some this week. We'll talk about the race horses in Jason and Kevin's barn. So starting with American League, raced okay, finished second. I believe he was second. I think he was second. I thought he raced pretty well. Colin Kelly drove him. Actually, I'm going to drive him on Monday. I'm not listed to drive him, but there's a little bit of a problem in Ontario when they draw the races, and for some racetracks, the scratch time is before the draw of other tracks. So I literally have to book off of Monday blindly without knowing what horses of ours are getting in at Mohawk. So as it turned out, we only got one horse in at Mohawk, and James is very capable of driving Twinsburg. So I'm going to in turn go and drive the other horses, both Springbridge Proud. We'll talk about them in a minute, but Springbridge Proud, Mo Better, American League, and Facing Justice are in Monday night at Grand River, and I'll go and drive them. So American League raced well last week. Did a little bit of vet work on him this week. I believe he'll be that much better for next week. Now he's moving from a 5/8 mile track to a half-mile track. He didn't do so well at Grand River. His first start, he made a break, and then made a break on me. And then the next week, Travis Henry was obviously a little more cautious with him, and he finished 3rd or 4th. I thought he raced pretty well. So American League is in to go Monday night. Now, Boston Glide. Here's a horse we talked about extensively over the last 6 weeks. This horse hurt himself. I thought he hurt himself in his last race at Mohawk. He raced well, trotted 56 last quarter in 28 seconds, and then his leg blew up, and I thought he was really injured. And we lucked out. He ended up with an infection in his leg. Jason got it all cleaned out, cooled out, and then what we did was, because he's such a big soft colt, all the ligaments and tendons, the way the vet described it to Jason and myself was, all those ligaments and tendons in the front legs are very immature. So what we did was we put a really good blister on his front legs and really tightened those ligaments and tendons up. And I was surprised. Jason had trained him, and he said he trained really well. Put him in to qualify, which I thought might have been a little bit early. And he said, no, man, he looks really, really good. He trained good this week. You know, warm him up and see what you think. But I really think he's ready to go. And he was right. He was ready to go. Qualified well. Put him in to go at Georgian Downs. First started Georgian Downs off a 6-week layoff. Moved him first over, getting into the last turn, and he was a winner at 158 and looked really, really good doing it. He's back in to go up a little bit in class, but I think he can probably handle that bunch. I don't know who's driving him. I can't drive him Tuesday. Likely Alfie Carroll, I guess, or maybe Robert Shepard. I'm not sure. But Colt coming off a big, big confidence-boosting win in his last start. I think he'll probably be good to go for Tuesday. Buckeye Babe, here's a filly that's really slid in the last little while. Jody's gonna move I see what he's doing. Thank you, Jody. Buckeye Babe, really, you guys obviously can't see, but I didn't have the stand with me, so I had to duct tape the phone to Jody's headrest, and there you go. So, Buckeye Babe really has not performed well this year at all. We didn't have high hopes for it. We really thought she turned into a nice Buckeye filly. But she really hasn't shown me. She schooled in 2-1 2 weeks ago, and then came out with a really piss-poor performance last week. I qualified her the other day, and I can't really say that I was very happy with how she qualified. Now, I saw some things that I mentioned to Jason after we might be able to change and work on, but overall, she's got some work to do, which is a little upsetting because she's a really nice filly, but, they're not going to pay us for looks, so she's going to have to really pull her socks up and start performing better, which I hope she's capable of. It looks like she is, and I really hope it comes to fruition, because we can only chase minor checks for so long, and if she's not going to advance at a reasonable rate, then we may have to look at selling her. So hopefully we don't have to come to that, because I really like this filly. She's a sweet filly to be around, but she does got some work to do, and I expect her to get to it. Now, Canally Hanover come back from a poor outing, 2 poor outings in Pennsylvania. Come back, finished 5th his first start, trotted well, finished 3rd the other night, raced even better. This colt's really going through a transition. Last year he was really easy. We just had a loose hobble on him. He chewed at himself a little bit, but raced really well. This year he made a couple of breaks. He got rough in Pennsylvania twice. Did not look very good at all. Now, he changed his shoes when he came back. I thought he raced better his first outing, and then raced it good again this week, but he's got some work to do also. Mile and 57 is not going to take you very far in the 3-year-old division. So I think he's probably capable of a lot more, but the shoeing changes we made were significant, and it may just be a little bit of a learning curve for Canally Hanover. But I like what I see in his gait over the last 2 weeks. He should be knocking on the door in that non-winners of 2 class any day now. I would hope to see him in the winner's circle. fan the flames. A little bit of a screw up this week. I had entered a bunch of horses in a series in Georgian Downs. I think they called it the Sharp Feed Series, just a little series for non-winners 1, non-winners 2 trotters. And I forgot to tell Jason that I had paid him into that series. The series went this Saturday, and with everything going on in the barn, I simply screwed up between not telling Jason and just not having that conversation. The horse was entered into go at Mohawk on Thursday. We had to scratch him because he was also entered in this series in Georgian, which ended up costing Jason and in turn me a $200 fine for screwing up. So the horse was, he didn't race on Thursday, but he is racing tonight at Georgian Downs. We did have some vet work done. By all accounts, he trained well this week. I'm not really sure who he's in with tonight. I think he's bet down a little bit on our morning line's low, so he should be fine in there, I would hope. This is his first start back on a 5/8 mile track. As you know, he's a little hikey and interferes some for the people that watch him and the people that own him. So I'm a little curious myself to see how this transition back to a 5/8 mile track is going to be. I would hope it's good. You know, the horse always seems to bang out money for the most part and do well. So really interested to see how he's going to do tonight. Hoosier Muscle found her way back again to the barn. Here's a filly that's a little bit of a troll. She likes to throw herself and act up. She got a little bit of speed. So hopefully what had happened, the owner had sent her to the Amish actually last month to see if they could get some work into her, and you know, obviously the put her in between 2 big draft horses and do a little work, and that throwing yourself usually comes to an end. So we'll see how stubborn this filly can be. If she had learned some manners, she could be a good little horse for both Daryl and well, Jason's moving to Ohio, so I guess whoever we end up sending her to within the stable will have her, and hopefully she does some good this summer. Mystical Mission raced really well the last few weeks. 2 weeks ago I put him on the run. I fessed up. It's probably my fault. A little bit him, a little bit me. Got put in a bad spot and he ended up making a mistake. Last week he was third again, raced really well. That was in the non-winners of 6. He's back up in the non-winners of 10. Now he did race well in the non-winners of 10 and finished third the week before. He's got, again, you're going to have to trot 54, 55 every week in there if you want to do good. So by all accounts, he's starting to look good, slowly coming back to the horse he was in the winter, but he's still got some ways to go yet. Peregrine Blue Chip, I would suggest probably ready to school this week after her injury a few weeks ago at Georgian Downs where she jumped on her foot and chopped her foot up. She's got some work to do. She has bigger fish to fry than that little boo-boo on her foot. She made the break because she got really rough in the last turn and showed me some speed down the lane, but you know, she's going to have to put it all together. This is a filly we've worked on for a very, very long time. The clients, Blue Chip Farms, and other people have been extremely patient with us and with this filly, and she's really got some work to do in the very near future, or she's another horse that might find herself on the for sale board. Promise Blue Chip threw in another mediocre second place finish last night. You know, this filly, you know, when you look at horses that are second, third, win the odd time, you're happy. But nothing about this filly makes me happy because she's a perennial, as I put it the other night, a perennial underachiever. You know, she just every week does a little bit less than she could. And as the person sitting behind her, I know she can do a lot more. She's shown a lot more. She just chooses not to on a regular basis. But as long as she keeps writing checks, I guess, seconds and thirds and the odd win here and there, I guess she's safe. But really frustrates me, this filly. We got a lot of horses in our barn in any number of stables that aren't as talented as her that achieve much more, and it's frustrating to watch this happen, but every horse is a little bit different, and hopefully she'll come around. It's just going to be on her own time apparently. Real Willie, there's a horse drew bad 4 weeks in a row, drew bad 9-10, and it took every fiber of my being to take him off the gate 4 weeks in a row, and I did. He drew the 4-hole the other night, everybody was leaving. I ended up getting away 4th or 5th, and I just didn't want to be first over, so I stayed in and got jammed up, and it's just a really bad trip. And Real Willie raced awesome again, though, paced I think 53 flat, 26-4 on the end of it maybe. Raced really well. It just needs a trip, this horse, and obviously I can't help but blame myself for last week, but the draw got him the 4 weeks ahead of that. Rose Run Speedster, he drew good. He drew the rail the other night, ended up 3rd or 4th. I think 4th last night in the rain. Louis Philippe Waugh drove him. He's okay. You won that race, didn't you, Jody, with the Paul Reed horse, you said?
Yeah.
That Paul Reed horse, you won the race with him, eh?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Muscle High? Yeah. He a nice horse?
Muscle Hill.
Muscle Hill. Is he a nice horse?
No, he's big.
Oh, Jody doesn't like him. So Rose Run Speedster did not, he's an okay horse, but he's a claimer. He's a claimer and a low condition horse, but he's going to do the owner some good in those classes. And he's racing okay, banging out checks. He won the race 3 or 4 starts back, 5 starts ago. And he's been doing pretty good. So good for him and good for the owners. Sally DeVee, another filly that's struggling a little bit. Very disappointed with what I saw out of her last week. She finished. she finished 5th. Jody is not a fan of my videos.
Well, he wants to talk in it. You haven't asked him to
I've
talk
asked
yet.
him. I asked him, and he told me that he didn't want to talk.
Just listen to the radio.
You know the
I like
rules.
to listen on the radio. Am I not better than the radio, Jody?
No, I gotta put my own gas in. I gotta buy my own sub, and I gotta listen to this.
Do you hear? You can't hear. Hopefully, you can't hear what he's saying. Anyway, back to what matters. Sally DeVee was poor the other night. Finished 5th. I guess I shouldn't say she was poor. She has her issues. She paced 57 in a bit. She raced okay, but it's another filly that I feel she could be doing more. I guess she could be doing a lot less. I guess you could look at it that way. But she does need to do more. She fits that condition claiming class at Georgian. Hopefully we can get them back to Grand River, I think would be helpful. And we'll be able to get some better miles on her. But all in all, Sally DeVee, I wouldn't say she's underachieving, but she's not doing enough. So hopefully we can get more out of her in the coming weeks. Last in Jason's Burn, and not least, well, almost last right now, but not least in my mind, is Zeppelin B. Zeppelin B is really, really having some issues at the racetrack. Raced him last night at Grand River. He's just not the same horse he was. I can't see anything mechanically wrong with him where I'd say, oh, it could be this or it could be that. He looks fine to me. I know that Jason drew his blood. His blood looked fine. I just think he's in a funk, this horse, and I think he's going to race his way out of it. We'll keep trying to drive him conservatively until he sparks up and get him back on track, because he's a nice little horse, but certainly hasn't shown it the last 4 or 5 miles. So Zeppelin B struggling a little bit. I think we're going to bring him down to Ohio, and we should find some easier racing down there for him also. So that is Jason's Burn. He had a decent week. He only had 1 winner in Boston Glide, I believe. He did. Real Willie raced well. Canale Hanover raced well. Rose Run Speedster raced okay. Promise Blue Chip threw up a 2nd. So tonight at Georgian, they're racing a few horses. Hopefully we'll do some good there. But all in all, it's been an okay week. Next week's going to be a big, big week, because Jason is going to be taking 15 horses and going stateside to Ohio, to the Buckeye State, where we're going to start racing all our 2-year-olds and some of our 3-year-olds. I think Zeppelin B and Real Willie will make the trek all the way down to Columbus. So that's Jason's Burn. That's a little update on our horses in the States with Andrew, and over in Illinois. We'll be back in a second with Kevin McMaster's Burn, and we'll be talking about how he did this week. So I lied. I wasn't right back. As you can see, I started my list on my way to Pennsylvania, and then Jody got yapping, and then he got turning the radio up, and then he got snoring, and I just said, never mind. I'll do it. I planned on doing a little bit at the Poconos, but I got running around, and I ended up warming up Lawmaker last trip. So I was focused on him and the race and what was going on, and obviously, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with sometimes, but at the same time, I'm happy to do it, and it's more than enough room on my shoulders. So, as I said to a guy last night, he was a friend, and he said, are you going to drive the horse in the final? It was a nice way of saying, why don't you use somebody else to drive the horse in the final? So I told him, I said, I don't want to be driving the 3-year-olds, but I know Lawmaker, I get along pretty well with him, and at some point this summer, I'm going to be driving the 2-year-olds, and at some point they're going to cross paths with the Lawmaker race, and I'm not going to be able to drive them. So, from my standpoint, I want to do what's right for our clients, and I want to do the best I can for you guys. And the The problem I run into is, look at it from my standpoint, it's a lose-lose situation for me driving Lawmaker. If I drive Lawmaker and he races well and he finishes well, it's just a really good horse. If he doesn't race well, Anthony drove him bad. So I can't win, but at the same time, this is what I signed up for. So I'm happy to do it. I had tried to explain to a lot of people when he had made the break in the qualifier, it certainly was not James McDonald's fault. And the horse was going through some difficulties. Anyway, we'll let it play out how it is. And I get all the way down there, race the horse. Bit of a screw up on the way back. We get home at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was just one of those things. The confirmation email is one click away from me. In my mind, I was positive my flight left at 11 and got to PEI at 1. I was positive, 100% positive. So I set my alarm for 8:45, a couple hours sleep, and I get up at 8:45, open my confirmation. My flight left at 8:45. So I called the airport. I called the Air Canada. I bought it through one of the, not Kayak, Cheapo Air. Should have known better. What am I doing? Anyway, Cheapo Air, I called them. They get me on a flight. So I look, and there's a flight leaving. It's a WestJet flight. Now, I'm flying with Air Canada, but I booked through this Cheapo Air place. So I look, before I leave, I look on their site again. There's a direct flight, 3 o'clock. It's in at 6:15. Now, as most of you know, I'm on my way to a funeral today. Mike McDonald, a very, very good friend of mine, and the first guy that Mark and I ever worked for, ever when we left home from BEI, was Mike. So I'm on my way to a funeral. So the celebration of life starts at 7 o'clock at night. I would assume goes for a couple hours. And I can't stay for the mass in the morning. I would have to change a lot. That's on my plate for Monday. And Mike was already cremated. He didn't want a big funeral. And I didn't realize that there was going to be a full-on funeral the way it was explained to me. There was going to be a mass. Well, anyway, long story short, I'm going to get there at 6:15 at night and fly out tomorrow at 5 o'clock. But it's worth it. It's worth it to be there. Definitely for Mike's family, Judy and Angie, and Laura, and Jamie Smith, who's married to Angie. It's more than worth it to be there for them. So I'm happy to. A little unhappy with Cheapo Air. They wouldn't put me on the WestJet flight. They said no. So I booked a flight down and a flight back through Air Canada. So they said because you missed your first flight, you have to book with Air Canada or they'll cancel your... They're virtually holding my money hostage. They wouldn't let me book with WestJet. They said because you missed the first leg, they automatically cancel the second leg. Which I got to double check they didn't already because I'll flip out if they did. But he's like, no, you have to book. No, he was clear. You had to book with it. Virtually, if you book with WestJet, your return flight will be canceled. No return. Canceled through Air Canada. Which is absolute goddamn garbage. Because who cares how I get there? As long as I'm there to show up for the second, it's my money. If I don't show up, put somebody else on the flight. Don't tell me you're going to cancel the flight. These guys are brutal. You wonder why I go on and on about Air Canada. There's nobody's fault but my own to miss the flight. It's not the end of the world. So I get there at 6:15 instead of 1 o'clock. They're still fine. I'm fine. But this bullshit holding your money hostage, that's crap. And that's why I hate Air Canada. Chintzy, money grubbing scumbags, and I hate if they said, listen, Anthony, we got a hot air balloon flying out of Kitchener. We can have you there by 6:45 and land in the infield of the racetrack. I would happily do it. Hate Air Canada with passion. Worst airline in the universe. Anyway, that's my rant for today. So I get up and there's a Starbucks right by my house. I pull in to get a drink and a muffin. And as I pull in, there's a lady pulling in at the same time. I wave to her, she waves to me by back and forth. So I go first. So I had to do the right thing. And it makes your day too sometimes when you buy somebody to pay for the people behind you. Although wouldn't recommend doing it at Starbucks because their order was about $13. But it makes you feel good anyway to do it. So that's my Sunday morning in a nutshell. I'm on my way to Pearson Airport right now to fly to Mike's celebration of life, I guess it is. So I wrote something on Facebook the other day about Mike. For those of you that don't know him, and when I was a kid, everybody knew Mike McDonald. But for those of you that don't know him, he was a good guy. He meant a lot to a lot of people from the Maritimes. Gave people a start. If you lived east of Montreal in the last 30 years, outside of the last 5, I guess, in the last 30 years, you knew very well who Mike McDonald was. Probably stopped at his burn. He probably gave you equipment, or gave you a place to stay, or whatever. Took you out to supper. Mike McDonald was a true gentleman and sorely be missed. I'll tell you that. So I'll be back in just a second with Kevin's week. As I did Jason's yesterday on my way to the Poconos. I'll do Kevin's today on my way to Pearson, and I'll do the babies from Pearson. So we'll get it all done for you at some point today. So I'll be back in just a minute with Kevin's week in racing.